Welcome to In Focus with Eden Lane.
This week we take another look at my visit with Lisa Kennedy from the Denver Post. It had been little more than a year since she had added theater to her duties as film critic and reporter for the Denver Post, and she shared her philosophy for handling both roles. So let's just start with, where do you come from? How did you get to Denver?
Well, actually, I started off in Denver. In general, my father was in the Air Force, and he was stationed in Amarillo, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of dates when we moved here. He moved here in the late 60s because they were closing Amarillo, and Lowry Air Force Base was still open. So
As
I
an Air
came
Force
a
base
kid,
and not a subdivision.
Yes, exactly. I took my parents through there a while back, maybe about when I moved here, so maybe like 7 years ago or something,
Mm-hmm.
and they were a little bit confused. I'm like, this is the officers club, right? This is where we used to go swimming? So I grew up here, and I went to college back east, so that's sort of how I wound up on the East Coast for about 20 years.
What's your alma mater?
Yale. So.
Just Yale.
Well,
Just Yale.
Anyway, yes, I am proud of that, but it sounds boastful, and I didn't do so well, so then I can't be that. I was like, woo, but I wasn't so good.
Well, you're doing well now, so
I'm
then
doing
you're
just
making
fine,
them
thank
proud
you.
of you now.
Yeah, we'll see.
So, having been away from Colorado for so long, what was different when you returned?
Plenty was different. I mean, really, I did leave in '79. That's when I went to college, and I know that a lot of things boomed. I remember I was in New York and watching TV one day, and they had the 16th Street Mall. And I'm like, where the heck is that? That's Denver? Holy cow! You know, because my parents moved in '86, so I hadn't been here in a really long time. So they had retired and they moved to Arizona in '86, so I hadn't been here in ages when I came back to look at it. So, you know, I think that there was culture here always. I mean, there were like great theaters. There was good theater here, and there was a great art house scene here. Great art house scene. It's better then in some ways than it is now, but that's also just the structure of art houses.
In what way? Because there were more
There were
of
just
them?
more.
Yep.
There were just more. I mean, there was like all kinds of cute theaters, and you know, the Ogden was like this great sort of, I can't remember what you call it, but it's like showed two movies, sort of. It was, and it was just fantastic, right? I mean, I just loved it, and it was really fun as a kid. And there were all kinds, like the Vogue was up near, DU or something like that, and it's like I can't even remember all of them, but it really was like it was fun. And when you're that age, at high school, it was really great to sort of explore. I think I saw more art house films in high school than I did when I was in college. So.
Do you think that obviously impacted the way you view films as much as your time at Yale, for example?
I think probably even more so, because in school I was doing sort of other stuff. I mean, I certainly watched some films and stuff, and there were like film societies at that time. So I saw a lot, but I think that in high school I was, sort of interested in that way and kind of ambitious and probably a little bit like sort of, precocious or something. So I went to see a lot of like art house films, and and there were plenty of places like the Flick. So when I went to talk to the people, when Bill Spence was at Telluride, and he had run the Flick, it was just so funny because I'm like, dude, I saw Elephant House, the Elephant Man there, and then I went over to Magic Pan, so it was, I think that it influenced a lot of how I think it gave me a good base.
Yeah.
So that when I came back to it, I was like, oh, I know why I like these. Because I wasn't always, I think that I love movies, but not in the way that lots of other people necessarily love movies. I sometimes, I can't quote a line. I'm serious. I do not think I can quote one single line of a movie. It's just like that's not the structure of my memory.
Yep.
And I'm serious. I've seen Thelma and Louise 14 times or something, and I'm telling you, I still don't think I could tell you one single line from it. But I can sort of spatially see the whole thing. So it's just that there are people who love movies like a geek, and I think I'm just sort of always in awe of that. And I think the way that I love the arts is probably I think that they're fascinating for what they say to us about ourselves, and the way that they make us think, and the way they make us feel, and the way they make us connect, and the way they sort of structure our empathy or not. So it's like that kind of stuff. It's sort of more philosophical in some fashion, and pleasure.
I remember watching movies, art house movies and old classic movies when I was a kid. I devoured it. And
Oh, yeah.
it was kind of unusual for my peer group. Was it unusual in your peer group, or did you get to share that with your contemporaries?
No, I had some good friends that I think we shared that and went to sort of see those movies together and sort of and shared them. But I think a lot of it, I mean, the old movies I think that I saw on television were just something that I just loved.
When you're watching a film now, sometimes you're watching a film for work.
Oh yeah,
Do you have time to watch a film just for enjoyment?
Yeah, absolutely. And I joke with people sometimes it's I know when I'm at a movie for fun because I don't have a notebook. You know, it's like I'm not sitting there taking notes. And sometimes I'll still pull out a notebook if there's something that really strikes me, but in general, you know, it's really fun to just go see something that I went to see Mud. Like I didn't get to see it, I didn't review it, and I didn't get to see it, and I was interested in it because I'd heard interesting things. I think Matthew McConaughey is sort of interesting in this moment right now and the choices he's making, and I wanted to see it, and I didn't have a notebook, so it was fantastic.
So that's how we know whether you're there to work.
Yes,
or not.
I think so. Yes, exactly. Though I often have a notebook and popcorn, so you could still be confused about me. So, yeah.
How do you let it wash over you differently when you're working as opposed to when you're just watching it for your own enjoyment?
Well, I think that one of the problems maybe for me, and it's something I struggle with, is that I think those experiences shouldn't be so different. I really wish that I would just like go to a movie the way, as a critic, the way I do as a film goer, because I actually do think that my job is to speak to other film goers, not to speak to like the people who make movies, and not necessarily even to speak to the people who are sort of, you know, super geeky in a way. It's like, no, it's about like pleasure and whether, you know, our sort of general reader at the Post would be interested in this and sort of engaging that aspect. And that's a fairly emotional, you know, with some, it's, you know, there's like that kind of great sweet spot between sort of thinking and feeling that I'm interested in. But I think the notebook's just a protection. I mean, it's almost like, I think it gets in the way sometimes, but I just haven't learned not to have it, because sometimes it's helpful to have some dialogue or like a, you know, just something to go reference, or just it sets it in your memory in a different way. Because honestly, if I showed you what my notebook looked like, you can't read what I'm writing. I can't read what I'm writing. It's like at some point it becomes like invisible ink. It's like if I don't like go back and sort of translate them immediately, I will really be sitting there going, I don't know what that word is.
So you do it that night, or maybe first thing the next morning?
I try to do it, yes, but I don't have a great habit in it. And I also know that it's like the things that really stick out are the things that probably matter to the readers, and certainly in terms of my writing matter.
And film, was that your first beat for the Denver Post?
Yes, that was my first beat for the Post. They reached out to me in '03. And I was in Arizona at the time, freelancing, and I was like, oh, I've been to Denver. I could go there. And I loved the guy, Ray Rinaldi, who was doing our arts, you know, arts and classical music criticism. He was the guy that reached out to me, and it was great. I really had a great time talking with him, and I came to meet people at the Post, and I loved it. And the truth is, I did know Denver. I didn't know it super well, but it wasn't like
because
I was going to get lost.
Yeah.
Well, no, I was, you know, I was like, I mean, I left out high school, so.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No, I mean, parents moved in '86, so I was around for a while. It's just that I hadn't been here for, you know, like 18 years or something since, so that was kind of unusual. But in general, I knew my way around. I sort of liken it. I was a big soap opera person for a while, so liken it to, you know, soap operas are the only things that have like people with amnesia.
That's right.
You know, nobody is like, soap operas have people who've had amnesia twice. You know, but and in a way it was just like, that's what coming back to Denver was like. It's like, I kind of know this place. Yeah. Oh well, okay, cool. I'll make it work.
So that was in 2003 that you got to come back, and you were freelancing before. Were you focusing on film at that time?
Somewhat, but on all kinds of stuff. I wrote a little bit for Wired. I wrote some television things. I wrote some film pieces for the London Sunday Times magazine, and
just the London Sunday Times magazine.
It's always like who you know. It has nothing. It's like out of a ether. It's like, no, it's because I knew the editor at the time, and I was closer to California than other London writers probably. So
it's still pretty.
But it was
impressive.
a nice. No, it was a great opportunity, and so it's like that stuff's kind of fun. And yeah, it's just like all kind of art stuff. But I also did a piece. I had started right when I got approached. Started to do a piece on. You know, prisons. So I was all over the map because I like feature writing. It wasn't just arts features. I like feature writing. I like trying to tell stories.
And you have the chance to branch out and do that when you
when
find the right topic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you get to do that now that you're at the Post?
Not really. But that's just because it's a busy gig, and I keep trying to sort of deepen the way that I do it and sort of understand how to do it and get a rhythm. I mean, when, it's been a little over a year since I became the theater critic as well.
I was just going to say, it's even doubly busy for you now.
It's very busy. It is very busy, and I like it very much. But it's a sort of steep learning curve to sort of have a whole new beat, and one that I think deserves as much intelligence as I can bring to something. I think it's fascinating, and I love the overlap and I love the divergence of the two things. It's been really
So where does it overlap for you?
I think sometimes it overlaps in terms of performance and what's getting sort of articulated. I mean, certainly acting for camera is different than acting in for a live audience, but the risk that people take, I just think it's also the sort of ambitions of the people who are creating is really fascinating. And so there's that overlap, and there's sort of the sense that people really are trying to, I know that we, especially with film, because it's so much easier, right? It's like you can tear down a film very easily and sort of forget that people did so much work to make something that you think is
Because
pretty
they never
garbagey.
really set out to make a bad film
They
or a
don't,
bad piece of
no,
theater.
I really think people don't, and I think it must be so excruciating when you've done all that. It's so, and film's so collaborative, and just to sort of know it's not good. It just must be really hard. And I'm a fairly thin-skinned person, so I think that makes it sort of. It means that I try to be a careful critic. And try to sort of respect what people were trying to do without giving them too much leeway to do something bad.
Well, because you said your first audience are the people who are going to go see the films, not necessarily the film geeks or filmmakers.
Sure. And the other thing is that when people, I find, and I could be wrong, it's just, it may have a lot more to do with my discomfort in judging things, but I also find that if you're too harsh about films that that people love, you're actually being pretty harsh about people's love.
Right.
And that seems misguided to me. It's it works because there are people that love acerbic critics, right? It's so fun to read. When it's it's fun
really
sometimes.
love that?
I think so. Anthony Lane can be pretty mean, and he can be doggone funny, right? The guy at the New York, David Denby's much more measured, but Anthony Lane is fun to read because he's going to say something mean. And he doesn't
want it to
really,
be dishy.
and
If it's going to be bad, we want it to be dishy.
Some people really love that. I'm not entirely one of those people, but I appreciate, it's a good writing and sort of, that kind of searing intelligence can be really fun. It's just not entirely, it's not my gift, and it's not entirely my taste in terms of what I want people, how I want humans to interact. It's for what it's worth. It's just one more voice.
When we read your material, you have a lovely gift of language. And
that's nice of you to say.
Well, I think people agree with me because everybody I know reads your columns, and we don't just read them just to find out if it's a good or a bad review.
Right.
It's good writing. It's fun to read.
All right.
So how do you describe your process of getting that to us? Because you said you're scribbling your notes, and I'm how does she come up with this great language?
Well, the funny thing is, I'm not sure that it's like I said, thank you very much, because I don't always feel that way at all. I very seldom feel that way. It's a real struggle still, often, to write. But I do like language. I really do sort of get a kick out of it, and I do want things to kind of resonate, and I want my writing to be, if not entertaining, because I don't think I'm funny particularly. I am funny in real life over beers. I don't even drink beer. Very much sorry, craft brewing, Colorado. I respect it though. But I enjoy language and I enjoy its possibilities. I think still I like to hear it. And when I was in college, if you'd asked me what I was going to be, there's always a weird list of things. But one of them was poet, because I like. I really do like poetry, and I came across a poem I wrote my mom because I'm packing her up to move to Colorado, and I was like, that's not bad. Everything's not bad from 10 years ago. It takes about 10 years before I go, that's not bad. So.
Well, I'm not going to wait 10 years to tell you that your respect for language and your respect for your reader really comes through every time.
Oh, well,
it
that's
really does.
Yeah, thank you, Eden. That's really kind of you to say.
What is it like for you now that you have been almost a full year adding theater to it? How do you approach it differently, or is it different than reviewing the writing of it?
Well, I do think the writing of it is different, in part because I think that I mean, I haven't nailed it at all, I don't think. I'm still trying to learn it, but I think that even though they're both things that we watch, right? There's this sort of notion that you could kind of like make it descriptive in that way. I think that there's something going on. I mean, and the thing I've loved about this job, the theater part of it, is talking to creators, actors, but also directors, about the sort of contract between the audience and the actors. It's, there's something really, bodies interest me, and that is one of the fascinating things about theater, right? I mean, the scary thing about theater sometimes is if it's bad, and we're very lucky in Denver, I think, to have such good theater, and I'm lucky to have 2 gigs where I get to kind of cherry pick stuff. I mean, I really thought that was the great thing about like sort of having a job that was like really 2 people's jobs, was that, well, this way I don't have to see, the sort of mediocre studio picture any longer and try to write honorably about that, because that's the most exhausting thing, right? To see a sort of B-level or C-level movie that you can't be really mad about. And, but it's like, why get mad? I mean, people when they go see like New Year's Eve, they know what they're in for. So this idea of like bringing a sledgehammer to that just always kind of depressed me. But at the same time, it's like you try to write honorably, and it's exhausting because honorable writing is kind of tiring. So then you get to like do this thing where, oh, well, I'm just going to like switch to theater where people are actually doing interesting work in town. This is like, we have some really good theaters. We have some really fine actors, and it's exciting to me. So I think the difference is partially taking seriously the kind of work and the kind of risk people are doing in that space and in this town, and kind of respecting it without getting too involved with it as a community. Like, I love how good things are in town, but I don't want to be sort of swept up into the life of the theater community, because I don't actually think that's my job entirely, and I think that it doesn't serve people who are actually trying to do really interesting work to have me be interested in that way, because it's sort of like, wait a minute, you can't have it both ways. It's like, we're not a provincial town anymore in terms of our arts, and I don't think we have been for a while. But we're sitting in the Denver Center, and the Denver Center is one of the sort of great spaces in the nation, it seems to me, for theater in a lot of ways. So let's treat it like that. And I think everyone here is very professional, and it's like, but people sort of want you to like treat them like friends. They're the thing, and then they want you to be their friends. It's like, oh, you know what? You really want me to be a critic because your work is good enough that I want to address it that way. And I mean, I found this with like independent film people here. Like, so our documentary filmmakers, they're really good. That's why they're getting like Academy Awards. That's why Daniel Youngie got an Academy Award, because he's really good. Our documentary filmmakers are making really interesting film. We don't quite have the Richard Linkletters yet. I mean, they might be out there. Jamin Wayans is doing interesting things, but I'm not sure he's right there yet. And for a while, I was just like, I'm not covering it anymore. I'm not covering narrative film because it's not there, and I'll just get angry at you that you're like, you want me to. And by the way, you don't read me, so when you call me to cover you, I know what that's about. That's like, I'm your publicist. I'm like, I'm not your publicist. I want to be the person that readers trust. That when I say there's something interesting going on, that they will like believe that it's interesting, and they'll be excited about you for the right reasons, not for, so it's sort of a challenge that way, but mostly it's been great to kind of engage. I love film, and when you go to film festivals, you get to have that conversation with filmmakers, but in general, you don't get to have that conversation with filmmakers on a regular basis.
Because we're sitting in a dark room to see it, and they're not there.
And you get to have it all the time with theater, so it's been exciting. And the people who make theater, they're so darn smart. I mean, it's like a lot of them are really engaged with ideas and a history of ideas that I find kind of humbling and thrilling, and I'm just like playing catch up.
And if they're making theater in a place like Colorado, it's more often than not about making theater and not about finding a path to fame.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great point. No, you're absolutely right. So there's a lot of honor in that. And and I think as a writer, or almost anybody, you want to like honor when people are doing honorable work. I think that sort of makes a better, it sounds silly, but it makes a better world. It makes a better community.
One thing that we can't miss the chance to discuss with you is that now you're the theater critic as well as the film critic for a major paper in a major market, and you're a woman, and you're a woman of color. There aren't many.
Yeah.
Does that impact you in any way? Do you feel that as a responsibility or an impact on how you approach your work in any way?
You know, probably not as much as I should sometimes. And
Why
I
do you
guess I
say
mean,
you should?
well, no. I guess I mean that I think sometimes I miss opportunities to actually do the good work of, people giving me an opportunity as an African American woman, as a lesbian, as a woman. It's like all the list, the whole darn, kiss of death list, as my dad said. It's
Check them all off. Yes, that's
like,
me.
that's me. I'm just so solidly middle class, upper middle class it's like, if I just like worked that, if I'd had your roots, then I would be all that and more, right? But I think sometimes I miss an opportunity to ask something really obvious about otherness because I don't feel it as otherness anymore. And I've been doing this gig for a really long time.
Isn't that important that you don't feel otherness?
I think it's probably great because it makes it, I think it means that I don't sort of go hat in hand. Not that people do, it's just that I think that it's like being anxious about stuff. I think sadly, there's a lot of entitlement built into me by now.
Yeah.
Based on just sort of, the years that I've spent.
Work.
I'm an old lady. It's like, so there's a lot of it that's
work.
just like the work has been there. And I don't think, I still, and I want to represent, I want to ask good questions. So yes, I think that there's a way, it's less about how I sort of present myself in the world to people as like that thing, so much as it's like, I think that I do have a bunch of questions that have been sort of honed and approaches and sort of, sympathies and empathies that probably have been built by being those things over time in different spaces and sort of competing and not competing and collaborating and not collaborating, all that stuff. So I think there's a lot of ways in which I probably do ask, when I see something, I'm thrilled that people loved Beast of the Southern Wild.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled people love Beast of the Southern Wild because it moved me so deeply. It's probably like, it's like a daughter and a father, so it might have moved me that way. It's my mother's from Louisiana, it might have moved me in that way. It moved me just but guess what? Loads of people were moved by it, so then I know that it isn't just about like sort of me being a woman, me having, like sort of family Southern roots or any of that stuff. It's like, it's art. And actually the great thing is African American people don't agree on that movie. It's like my dear friend who's a programmer at Sundance, she felt differently about it than I did. And much more suspicious, and like bell hooks went off on it, So it's like they're, without seeing it, which was probably the best way to go off on something. But I know it's like, she knows better than that. But it is an interesting, And so I think that basically, what I like about being that checkoff list is that I think it helps you ask a different set of questions sometimes, and that those are very important questions to ask, and that it helps you help other people ask those questions, right? So they don't have to be that thing, but they can sort of hear and sort of know that, I love watching people ask a different set of questions and being like, oh, I think we don't have any people of color in this like issue. And it's like when someone, when a lovely, not lesbian, not black, but someone asks that, I'm like, right on, let someone else do the heavy lifting, right? It's like, that's sort of the thing. But I am happy that I feel kind of, personally, because it's about my parents and stuff like that, I feel privileged to be who I am in a way and sort of see how I ask those questions in the world.
And the fact that you said that you don't feel the weight of that otherness in your regular work is an important message for anyone who'll be looking at you as an example of what they could achieve.
Right. That's, I hope that's true. I like to think that's true. And I don't know. It's a funny thing because that said, I saw a play the other night that had, that has one black character, and the audience, there was another African American. I don't always notice that stuff, but I think that sometimes, well, actually, if there's a black character and they are playing, so it's like, it was, and then there were none. And so it's gonna, so it is actually played up already, the race, because she's like Sister Hattie, so she's after, my other East High alum, like, it's like Hattie McDaniel. And I thought, I believe, and I could be wrong, that the joke, so there was a joke and someone looked at me, my neighbor near me, to see if it was okay to laugh. And I could be wrong, because I think you're often wrong. You're often wrong about what people, unless I sort of go, why did you just look at me at that moment? Then you're just making an assumption. But it's kind of interesting. The world is interesting when it's not hairy.
Yeah. That's true.
But it's just not plain Harry.
I think that's an important thing to note, though, because we are in Colorado, where there's a sense of our community is making strides and trying to be more not just diverse but inclusive, because those can be very different things.
Absolutely, yeah. No, it's a good point.
And to have yours be the work that serves this entire community, I think is an important thing to note.
But I don't always pay attention to this. I mean, I think that's the thing, is that sometimes I don't go to bat in the same way that I should. I mean, I will make a mistake and not sort of go and pay heed to something that's trying to do something that needs to be, it's like I don't think I'm always the advocate I should be for people of color.
Sometimes
and
it's
artists.
because you're busy doing the work.
Yeah, that's mostly it. But at the same time, I am sometimes aware of, like, you need to do better. So.
We all need to do better in a lot of things.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's that struggle, the rolling up your sleeves and trying it.
Well, and it's, I mean, honestly, one of the things you learn is that, at least I like to think, is that the world's more diverse than black and white. And that's the one that was like the sort of diversity that was like the sort of tension that I grew up with in some ways. And it's just richer than that. And our communities are richer than that, and like the sort of things that you need to learn about your own sort of biases or blind spots as a person of color or as a black person in relationship to like Latinos or Asians. It's like there's always something new to learn.
There's always something new to learn.
There's always some new human being that you got to figure out, and you figure out how you sort of situate yourself in relationship to them. It's kind of cool.
Well, again, I hope I get to catch up with you when we come back from summer
nice
break.
of you.
And you said that you enjoyed getting to interview some really intelligent people, and you've made this a pleasure because it's a wonderful chance to get to talk to a really intelligent woman doing this work for us here in Colorado at the Denver Post.
Let me get my wallet.
Thank you for making time for me today.
Thank you, Eden, for asking me. It's fun. Thank you very much.
You can find Lisa Kennedy's features and reviews of theater and film in the Denver Post and at denverpost.com. Local Theater Company presents their 3rd annual Local Lab New Play Festival at E-Town Hall in Boulder, March 14th through the 16th. Details are available at localtheatercompany.org.
Remember to join us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Snugglebug.